So I think, how do you want us? Jag sätter mig sen efter. Yes, welcome, Magnus Corfitzen, CEO of AsceliaPharma.
So, welcome everybody to the presentation of AsceliaPharma. So I'll be making some forward-looking statements today, so please pay attention to this. In AsceliaPharma, we're dedicated to improving the life of people living with cancer, and we do that by offering better cancer treatment options for clinicians. Our business model is to identify, develop, and commercialize novel drugs that address unmet medical needs in the rare cancer field. We have two products in clinical development. We have Orviglance, which is a diagnostic drug, earlier known as Mangoral. It's in a global phase 3 program, and we expect to complete the program first half next year and launch the product in the US in the second half of 2023. Oncoral is heading into phase 2 in gastric cancer, and we expect that to happen soon. We're based in Malmö in Sweden. We're listed on Nasdaq Stockholm, and we are financed well into 2023. So first I'll talk about our lead program, Orviglance. So Orviglance is given to a patient before the patient goes into an MRI scanner. Orviglance is given because it improves the visualization of the liver, and especially when looking at cancer in the liver, which is a major problem. Many cancer types spread or metastasize to the liver, and it's important to diagnose that early and treat it as aggressively as possible to improve the survival for the patient. Before undergoing a scan, an MRI scan of the liver, it's important that clinicians assess the kidney function. The kidney function is important because of potential safety concerns. So in patients where the kidney function is good, it's well functioning, these patients are injected directly into the bloodstream with a gadolinium-based imaging drug or contrast agent to optimize the visualization of the liver. Gadolinium is a toxic heavy metal. It's bound in a chelate chemical structure to minimize toxicity. Unfortunately, for patients with poor kidney function, where the clearance of the gadolinium from the body is too slow, this causes some side effects. The most serious one is known as nephrogenic systemic fibrosis, which is potentially fatal for these patients. And as a consequence, all the gadolinium products, everything that is being used today, have a regulatory black box warning on the package insert highlighting this risk. This is exactly the patient population that we in Ascelia will help with Orviglance. Orviglance is not injected. It's an oral product that people will drink in a glass of water, and it will go selectively to the liver and provide very strong enhancement. It's also very different in the way that it's based on manganese, which is very different from the gadolinium. So that's the target population. That's why Orviglance will be the only product. So this image I've shown to some of you before, this is from a patient in one of our phase 2 clinical trials. To the left-hand side, you will see the healthy, or you could say the liver in the unenhanced scan, and it looks healthy. You can see some black structures, and for radiologists with additional information, they would be clearly identified as blood vessels and bile ducts. The patient is then administered Orviglance. And what happens is that after drinking Orviglance, the manganese in Orviglance gets into the healthy hepatocyte, the healthy liver cells. So all the healthy liver cells become bright. And remember, in this situation, the doctor is looking for cancer cells. The cancer, in this case, colorectal cells that have become cancer cells and move to the liver, they are unable to take up the manganese. And it will stay black, as you see with the orange structure. Here, the clinical decision-making is very different. Based on the information to the left, the conclusion would be that the cancer has not spread, and therefore the doctors will not treat the spreading of the cancer. To the right, they would identify metastasis that potentially could be removed by surgery, dramatically improving the survival prospects. So this is one example. We've done 6 clinical phase 1 and phase 2 trials. Very consistent, very strong results. We've also done a reread of all the available data that have been presented at major radiology conferences. We saw 33% more lesions, more black spots with our agent. And we also saw highly significant effects on delineation and conspicuity. Important parameters because they are the primary endpoint in the phase 3 trial. We've also announced in a head-to-head study with a liver-specific gadolinium agent that we had comparable lesion visualization based on these metrics. Actually, 2 out of the 3 readers preferred Orviglance. So we can certainly say that you're not compromising on quality. At the RSNA, the biggest conference in radiology that will happen the week after Thanksgiving on December 2nd, we will have an oral presentation where we will share more data on this study. So the phase 3 trial is 200 patients. They have poor kidney function, so they are at risk from the severe side effects from gadolinium, and they have focal liver lesions, which for most of them will be cancer. We will compare unenhanced versus the combined information from unenhanced plus Orviglance enhanced. So on the picture I showed you a minute ago, the left-hand side alone versus the combined information that a radiologist can get from both the left-hand and the right-hand side. We will measure, as mentioned, the same parameters as we have successfully proven in the phase 2 program. And it's a relatively short follow-up. We follow up only for safety. Once we have the scans from the patient, we have everything we need for the efficacy. The trial is ongoing. We have more than 40 sites active, and we expect to complete it in the first half of next year. As many others, we've had some challenges in enrolling patients at the anticipated speed due to COVID, but things are looking encouraging, and we are doing our best to meet this target. So finally, once we get the product to market, it's a very significant opportunity, and we're preparing. Our commercial team is doing a lot of pre-launch activities to work with the stakeholders. The market is $500 to $600 million addressable market in US, Europe, and Japan. As with many other products, the US is the largest and most important market, and that's what we want to keep to ourselves. We will build our own commercial team in the US, and we will look to partner in other geographies. So changing gears to the other program that is about to enter a phase 2 clinical trial now in gastric cancer. So Oncoral is formulated around irinotecan. Irinotecan is a well-known, widely used anti-cancer therapy. Today it's given to patients every 3rd week as an infusion. They go to the hospital with a needle and a line, and it's injected in a relatively large dose directly into the bloodstream. We believe that this does not utilize the full potential of irinotecan, that this provides a suboptimal trade-off between benefit to the patient, efficacy, and risk and side effects. We can transform this by giving daily doses. And to give daily doses, you cannot have a daily infusion. You need a tablet. And that's what we have with Oncoral, where we have a patented tablet formulation. The concept is to give daily treatments at therapeutic levels and get cancer treatment with a better safety profile. So how does that work? So we have completed the phase 1A and phase 1B trials. We saw generally well tolerated in the sense that we saw no unexpected side effects. In particular, we saw a better safety profile on the hematological side effects, in particular neutropenia. So neutropenia is when the level of white blood cells drops. That can potentially be a life-threatening situation because then the patient will be very prone to infections. Infections in these patients who are sick can potentially be fatal, and that will cause a stop in treatment and thus providing a poor outcome for the patient. So this is important, and we know, and that's known in the literature, that with the intravenous version, neutropenia is a significant problem. So in terms of the safety, we have encouraging signs. We also have some patients who were very sick, who had previously gotten intravenous large doses all at once with irinotecan, where the tumor had continued growth. The daily dosing actually stabilized the tumor size for some patients quite a long time, which was very encouraging. So we're heading into phase 2 in gastric cancer. The reason is that we know irinotecan is potent in treating and attacking gastric cancer cells. It also allows the potential for an orphan drug designation. And we will be testing it in combination with a product, a tablet therapy known as Lonsurf, which is approved in gastric cancer as well as colorectal cancer. On this slide, you can see the synergistic effect between irinotecan and LONSURF, where it basically is inhibited tumor growth, and which is much better than each of the agents on itself. This leads to the trial design. We have designed the study together with our world-class medical advisory board. It's 100 patients that will be in metastatic gastric cancer. And we will compare LONSURF with Oncoral versus LONSURF alone. We will see adding Oncoral, will that help? Looking at the data from the previous slides, there's reason to be optimistic. We will measure on progression-free survival and look at important secondary endpoints, including overall survival. We also announced recently that we have made a collaboration with Taiho Oncology. Taiho Oncology is part of Otsuka, which is a global Japanese pharmaceutical company. Taiho Oncology is the business unit specialized in oral tablet therapies for cancer. So this is right in their sweet spot. So they have also provide some LONSURF for free, and as well as providing a lot of scientific advice to the design and the execution of our phase 2 clinical trial. So this has been very helpful. Important to note, Ascelia continues to have all commercial and development rights to Oncoral. So I want to round off here saying the major key milestones that we have is getting the phase 2 trial started with Oncoral, complete the patient enrollment in the Sparkle study, the Orviglance phase 3 study, as well as all the pre-launch activities that are ongoing and growing in scale as we work our way towards the launch in the second half of 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Magnus. Good presentation. And for the Q&A is the next chapter, and we're joined by Daniel Bolonovsky. Welcome. Very much in focus is the recruitment, of course, and it's sometimes and for different companies it's a bit challenging now with the Delta situation, and COVID is not over and done. And what's the outlook and what's the dynamics now for your main product?
Yeah, I think we believe and we do everything we can to deliver and complete the patient enrollment in the first half of next year. So obviously the situation this winter is very different from previous winters. It's a lot of people have been vaccinated, and we can also see that even when COVID infection rates increase, hospitalization rates are still quite low, which means that all the ordinary you could say clinical activities, in particular treating cancer, can be maintained. But we've also seen, especially during the early part of the beginning of the COVID situation, that overall, not just in you could say in our study, but overall in the general population, rates of cancer diagnosis have been significantly lower. In some cases, as much as 40% lower than the pre-COVID situation, because patients are not reacting to the symptoms, not going to the hospital.
So, and you expanded the number of centers as well.
Absolutely. So when we saw the impact, and the first wave came exactly as we were starting the phase 3 trial, which was logistically quite a challenge. But we turned it around and we said we need to do things differently, and we need to make it as safe and as easy for the patients and for the investigators to do the study. So not knowing how the scope of the COVID, we added more sites. We included more countries because we wanted a broader geographical variety. We also went to and hired some home nursing services. So there are some safety follow-up visits. And the initial intention was the patient would go to the hospital. But now we've given them the opportunity they can stay at home for the safety follow-up visits and have a nurse come to their home and do the checks and thus be less exposed to COVID. So we have done this and other things to make this study more, you could say, appropriate in a COVID setting, where there's a natural concern from the patients. And also some of the hospitals have been, because they are centers of excellence, have been also fully focused on treating the very severe COVID patients. So I would say overall, we've done a lot of things. Things are looking a lot better now than they were last winter, certainly. So we are optimistic, and we believe we can do it in first half 22.
Very good. And looking at the earlier data, there are good reasons to be optimistic, both in terms of safety and efficacy, as you pointed out in the presentation. However, MR is pretty expensive as it is, and of course, will become a premium product, as it should be. Is this a challenge for the price, that it's already part of something that is fairly expensive?
You could say the way we will price it is based on the value it provides to the healthcare system, and we will come out with a price that will be negotiated with the payers that will, you could say, save money for the healthcare system. So to understand that, then the only cost they have is not the diagnostic procedure. It's the overall treatment of the patient. And by having a proven better diagnostic accuracy, then they can save money. So the overall cost of the imaging procedure compared to the treatment cost is a very small fraction of the overall cost. If you're considering doing a liver surgery procedure, you really want to have the best data. Otherwise, you will not get the value from the $50,000 procedure. So from that perspective, there will be a smaller investment, slightly higher than if you were having an unenhanced MRI. But the outcome, the quality will be so much better to make the very expensive treatment decisions or surgical decisions based on. So from that perspective, we believe healthcare system will save using Orviglance.
And should we expect more health economic studies going forward, or?
So we are continuing to do a lot of, you could say, internal, value documentation, and that value documentation may or may not be shared. I mean, we are essentially entering into a number of negotiations with payers. So some of the information may be relevant to share. Some of the information would be better to just have you could say, in a closed room discussion with the payers to avoid, you could say, jeopardizing our negotiation position. So we want a price that is fair, represents the value, but it's only fair and represents the value if it provides value to the payer and the patient.
So in that same discussion, how do you segment the market? Because you could have a premium pricing, a real premium product for the kidney, those with pre-existing kidney conditions.
Yeah.
But you showed, or you're inclined in your data, that you are comparable with current standard of imaging agent. That would be a broader market. Probably you will have to lower price to compete there. So what's your thinking? What are you targeting?
No, so we are targeting the patients with poor kidney function, where we have the highest value, and which is also what we can use in the, you would say, the value pricing discussions. So the product based on the Sparkle study will not be approved in the broader population. So it's a small study with 20 patients that look comparable, but you need more data to open up to that many patients for sure. So that would require additional studies post approval to move into that indication. But obviously, you say that would be sort of a natural barrier for patients with perfectly healthy kidneys to use Orviglance because of the price.
And perhaps we should, time is flying, but the Tahoe collaboration and the combination with Lonsurf is pretty promising. It's a partner with a very relevant presence, and also the Lonsurf is a premium product with a long patent and a reasonably high price. What should we expect in terms of, or is it reasonable to expect in terms of efficacy and safety and potential?
Yeah. No, so we're super excited about the collaboration we've made with Taiho, and their engagement in this, despite that they're not getting any rights out of it, it has been quite substantial. So it's quite important for us to see when we you could say brought it up with them after having discussed and reviewed many options with our medical advisory board, a very prominent oncologist, that they immediately said, this is very interesting. We can help you out here. And obviously for them, if they were thinking on expanding their portfolio, having high quality data in conjunction with some of their key products would be, very interesting for them. So this is one very good combination. It will be all tablet therapy for some very sick patients. We've also seen revenue growing quite a lot for oral cancer drugs during the pandemic, because these patients are very fragile and they'd rather take therapies at home than going to the hospital.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Fortunately, that's all we have time for, but
Yeah.
we're looking forward to the future.
Yeah, thank you.